Hello, and welcome to Teacher Talk Tuesdays, where I sit down with you and I discuss a variety of different topics, all in the scope of education. So, how can we get our students excited about reading? One of the biggest things I noticed engagement in is when I set specific goals for students. So in my classroom, I had a percentage chart. So it went from 10% to 100%. And I did use an AR program that helped me track this. So each student had a piece of paper that had their goals on it. And then once they took a test and passed their test, it would tell them what percentage of their goal they made. Then they got to go move their clip on the chart so that the whole class could see. And then twice a week, we would set aside some time either before or after silent reading or at the end of the day for snaps. So if a student moved up twice on the chart, they got 2 snaps, moved once, they got 1 snap. But this really encouraged the whole class to see who was moving. They would get excited to be able to move up their pin, and this really encouraged engagement. And it also helped students see where they were in their own goals. So it gave them some type of accountability and responsibility for their own reading. So setting student goals for reading, my number one tip. Let's move on to tip 2. Tip 2 I have is modeling reading in class. And I normally read a book that was at their level. So this encouraged students to see that not only were they responsible to read, but I also enjoyed reading, which I do. But I would set aside time during our morning meeting to discuss what we were reading, and I would also share. I often found books that my students have already read, so that way they were also excited to hear what I had read because they also read it. So, tip 2, model reading in class when you can. This goes along with classroom management, but I set an expectation during silent reading. You are not asking me any questions. If it was an emergency and they had to use the bathroom, I said just go quietly, so that way I wasn't disturbed during my reading, but that hardly ever happened. So definitely encourage this one. It's super easy to implement. I know we want to sometimes be grading or looking up stuff, and I did that from time to time, but I really try to encourage modeling so that students could also see that, yeah, reading is fun and our teacher does it too. My third and final tip on how to get students engaged in the classroom and be excited about reading. Having a classroom library. So through my first year, I really worked hard to build my classroom library, and it takes time, but some ways to do it is going to your local thrift store and just telling them, hey, I'm a teacher. I really am in need of books. And I had a couple of them let me pick out some books for free. Facebook Marketplace a lot of times has free books. And then a lot of my books I got from teachers who were retiring or leaving. So it takes time to build your classroom library, but something that you can work on over time. Having a classroom library also encourages students to go back and see that there are books that are available to them outside of their school library. And this also encouraged them to figure out what kind of books they like. I had nonfiction, I had fiction, I had graphic novels that were age appropriate. I don't really care as long as they're inside that book reading. We want to keep them excited about reading, knowing that it's okay to explore different topics when they're trying to figure out what kind of reader am I. So having a classroom library encourages that. And then I also had books on display that they could grab anytime they want. One thing to keep in mind is the books that you are going to be buying, you may have like a checkout system, which I did on some of my books, like my graphic novels. And then other books, if they were lost, I wasn't that worried about. And then my last year teaching, I got some students to help me, and we put the reading level of each book inside of them. And that just takes time. Don't worry about that. Early on, that's a lot. But later on, you can start building more to your library and finding other tools and resources. Those are my 3 tips for keeping students excited, engaged, and wanting to read. What are your tips? What are some things that worked for your classroom? Leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.